The movie begins a long time ago when a chariot rider named Thut rides into a competition against other riders. Some riders bash into each other and Thut is forced to swerve but takes some damage. He continues riding and catches up to the rider that caused the accident. The rider and his accomplice try to trap him and destroy his chariot, but Thut slows down and they hit themselves. He celebrates as he reaches the finish line, but his chariot suddenly crashes and he falls to the ground. In the present day, Lord Sylvester Carnaby prepares to open an Egyptian tomb, but he gets interrupted by a call from his mother. He continues recording and enters the tomb, where he sees a coffin and opens it. The coffin is empty and the mummy he searched for is missing. He begins to translate the ancient writing, and it talks about a gateway to a different world. A beetle suddenly falls on the ground and crawls through a hole, and Carnaby says he has found something. The beetle makes its way to the world of the undead, where the mummies reside. Thut sits in a building and signs autographs for people. A woman asks why he hasn't gotten married, and he says he's uninterested. Later, Sekhem, Thut's younger brother, stares at a picture of Thut and asks him when he will continue racing. Thut gets scared as he stares at the wheels on the painting and says he's never going to race again. He goes to buy some food and sees that an old woman needs help crossing the road. He helps her cross and rushes to retrieve her bag, but almost gets hit by a chariot. A woman named Nefer rides the chariot and tells him to look before he crosses the road. The old woman's food gets crushed, and Thut gives her his own food. Nefer returns to the palace and tries to sneak in. She begins to sing as she sees that the palace is always the same, and Usi suddenly interrupts. Usi says that singing is for entertainers and reminds Nefer she is the princess. She then agrees not to tell her father, but the pharaoh emerges. They inform Nefer that the phoenix will help her select a husband, but she says she isn't ready to get married. The pharaoh informs her that it is her duty, and they proceed to the ceremony. The chief priest opens the stargate for the phoenix, and it flies around the city in search of Nefer's husband. Sekhem plays with his boomerang, but it bounces on several surfaces and knocks down the phoenix. The chief priest sees as the phoenix falls and says it has selected someone. The phoenix falls on Thut's house and several guards emerge as he stares at his burnt picture. The guards take him to the palace as he wonders what is going on, and the chief priest informs him he will get married to Nefer in 7 days. Thut forms excuses not to get married, but the chief priest says they will cut off his tongue and cut out his eyes if he refuses. He gives Thut a ring and says he must protect it until the day of the wedding. Thut talks to Nefer and she tries to convince him to back out of the wedding. He realizes it's meant to be night, and Usi contacts an operator who controls the time of day. They put the sun down and turn the day to night. Thut gets annoyed and leaves, and Usi says she thinks he is nice. Thut means Sekhem and says he doesn't want to get married. He then says he'll have to protect the ring and takes it to a storage unit outside the city. Thut and Sekhem leave the building, but Carnaby uses a drone to enter the room. He gets distracted by a call from his mother and leaves Dennis and Danny to control the drone. They destroy several items in the room as they argue, but Carnaby returns and takes control. He takes the wedding ring and several other items and uses an explosive to make a large hole. Thut hears the explosion and rushes back to the building. He sees that it is destroyed and panics because he doesn't find the wedding ring. Thut says he'll have to go to the world of the living to retrieve it, and Sekhem decides to follow him. They move through the tunnels and arrive at the tomb. Sekhem turns on a bright light, but Thut instructs him to be careful so they don't reveal their true forms. They step out of the tunnel and a truck suddenly drives past them. They follow it and see as Carnaby puts the ring in a crate and onto a truck. Thut and Sekhem sneak to the truck but realize they are on the wrong truck. The trucks begin to move, and Thut and Sekhem hide in a crate as they arrive at a seaport. Their crate is loaded onto a ship, and they prepare to fight as a strange person walks into the room. They realize it's Nefer, and she asks if they're trying to run away. Sekhem confesses that they lost the ring, and Nefer is happy. Thut then tries to open the door, but gets knocked out. He wakes up a while later and is informed that they are in the middle of the ocean. They decide to sleep and find their way home when they get to land. And Thut realizes Nefer snores while sleeping. The ship arrives at a port in England, and the trio is shocked by the structures. They think they are in Babylon, and they see Carnaby with the ring. They decide to follow him and sneak onto his car as he drives away. The trio arrives at the city and some tourists take photos of them. The flashing lights reveal their true forms and the tourists run in fear. They take the camera and enter a theater where a man thinks they are performers and instructs them to join the other dancers. The dancers get on the stage as some people sing and perform, and Nefer sees the ring on the male singer's hand. She interrupts their performance as she sings and says the ring belongs to her. Carnaby watches the performance and is shocked as he realizes that Nefer is a mummy. Nefer takes the ring and steals the show as she sings, and the audience gives her a standing ovation. The trio leaves the building, and Sekhem laughs as he says Thut likes Nefer. They decide to return to the realm of the dead, but don't know how to operate a car. A man named Ed sees them and tries to talk to Nefer. He says he loves her voice, but Thut tries to get him to leave. Carnaby emerges from the building, and Sekhem recognizes him from the dig site. Ed helps them escape and drives away, and he continues complimenting Nefer. Thut eventually asks him to stop the car, and they get down. He tries to prevent Ed from talking to Nefer, but Nefer insists, and Ed gives her his card. Nefer sits on some stairs, and she says she has always wanted to sing. Thut wishes the phoenix didn't choose him, and Sekhem confesses that he accidentally knocked the phoenix down, so it didn't choose him. Nefer and Thut celebrate, but Sekhem laughs at them because they are hugging each other. They then realize that the ring is fake, and Nefer suggests they rest before searching for it. Sekhem suggests they go to Ed's house, but Thut is against the idea. It begins to rain, and they're forced to go to Ed's house. Ed welcomes the trio into his home and takes Nefer to his studio. Thut talks to Sekhem's pet crocodile and talks about how strong and intelligent Nefer is. Carnaby talks to Dennis and Danny and says Nefer was wearing a symbol that's similar to the one on the ring. He then says the legend of the ring is true and says he must add her to his exhibition. Ed wakes Thut and the others up and says he wants to stream Nefer singing. He then suggests they get new clothes and gives them his card. The trio walks into the store and Sekhem plays a game while Thut and Nefer test several clothes. They finish shopping and return to Ed's house where he prepares to start streaming. Thut reminds her that they have to find the ring, but sees she loves singing and decides to support her in whatever she does. Nefer begins to sing and Ed broadcasts her singing. She quickly becomes popular and begins topping several charts. Thut talks to her on the balcony and she says her dreams are finally coming true. He says he's happy for her and she realizes he's sad. She then promises to help him find the ring, and he walks into the house. Nefer talks to Sekhem's crocodile, but suddenly gets knocked out with a tranquilizer. Sekhem and Thut notice something is wrong, and see as Nefer is put in a van. Thut tries to pursue the van, but trips as he reaches it. He suspects Ed of being an accomplice and says he will save Nefer alone. Nefer wakes up in a strange room and realizes she's chained to the ground. Carnaby emerges and she asks him to release her, but he refuses. He flashes a bright light at her and says she will be the center of his exhibition. She tells him that Thut will save her and he walks away. Thut arrives at the museum and walks in as Carnaby sees him through the surveillance cameras. Thut finds Nefer chained to the ground and tries to free her, but Carnaby emerges and tries to tap him into the cell. She tries to escape, but Carnaby tranquilizes them, and they pass out. Sekhem sits in the house, and his crocodile convinces Ed to help them save Thut and Nefer. They arrive at the museum, and Ed is unable to climb, so Sekhem goes in alone. He gets to the exhibit while blocking the cameras and breaks the glass. He sees that Nefer and Thut are acting funny, and he tries to escape with them. Carnaby scolds Dennis and Danny and rushes to the exhibit as they hear the glass shattering. They see that the mummies have escaped and move around in search of them. Thut and Nefer continue acting strange as they hide, and she kisses him. Sekhem finds the ring as he tries to escape and takes it. Thut and Nefer begin insulting Carnaby, but realize they're talking to his cardboard cutout. Ed emerges, but gets knocked out by a tranquilizer, and the trio carries him as they escape. They hijack a bus, and Sekhem says he learned to drive through a game. Carnaby pursues them using a van, and Thut gets an idea. He instructs Sekhem to head for a ramp, but they suddenly change directions, causing Carnaby to drive on the ramp and land on a boat. The trio successfully escapes, and Sekhem says it's time they return to the underworld. Ed points at a poster that says they can fly to Egypt, and Nefer sees a poster of her song. Thut says it's time for her to choose what she'll do, and she decides to follow them home. Thut talks to Nefer on the plane, and they laugh as they say they can't get married. She tells Thut he is brave, and he says he isn't because he retired out of fear. She then tells him he is brave because he risked his life to rescue her. She then puts the ring around his neck like a necklace. Unknown to them, Carnaby, Danny, and Dennis are on the plane and are headed for Egypt. The trio arrives to Egypt and returns to the underworld. Thut takes Nefer to the palace and tells her goodbye as they walk in different directions. They yearn to be with each other, but continue walking away. Nefer meets the pharaoh and apologizes for leaving, but he hugs her. Thut stares at the wedding ring and drops it on the table as he walks away. Carnaby, Danny, and Dennis use large tractors to break into the underworld. Carnaby says he wants to capture the pharaoh. Some guards inform the pharaoh of what is happening, but the tractor breaks into the palace and tries to abduct him. Nefer emerges and tries to save him as she says it's his fault. Sekhem rushes to Thut and tells him that Carnaby has arrived and is causing havoc. He convinces Thut to help by saying Nefer needs a brave person to save her. Nefer hangs on to the tractor as she tries to save her father, but Carnaby tries to knock her down. He drives around the city and he hits several buildings, falls to the ground, and then prepares to crush her, but Thut emerges on a chariot and saves her. They pursue Carnaby as he tries to escape, and Thut jumps on the tractor. The chariot attaches to the tractor and heads for a cliff, but Thut releases the pharaoh and pushes the chariot off as he tells Nefer he loves her. The tractor falls off the cliff and explodes, but the necklace saves Thut and he climbs up and hugs Nefer. Thut puts the ring on Nefer's hand and she happily agrees to marry him. The wedding ceremony occurs and Nefer begins singing for the audience as everyone has fun. The end. Thank you for watching. Check out the other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap that bell icon to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.